Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing how I naturally reversed my hiatal hernia. But first I want to say hello to everyone that's taking my free 28-day anti-reflux plant-based challenge. So I'm here live now. I'll be back in the kitchen later today at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for a cooking demonstration. Tonight I'm going to be making, the winter noodle soup and the Dagwood sandwich. So I love this soup. It's very reminiscent of like a Campbell's chicken noodle soup. It's even better in my opinion. And of course it's really good for you. So I'm going to be doing that again, like I said, later today at 5 o'clock. I'll be back in the kitchen. So stay tuned for that. What I wanted to do now was to, first of all, remind you that I am going to be at the very end of this free 28-day challenge. In the final week, I'm going to be going into depth about hiatal hernias. If you're doing the challenge now and you're getting great benefits, that's great. For some people, going on a challenge like this, they don't really see benefits, and that can be for a couple of reasons. One is if you have dysbiosis of the gut, which just means an imbalance of the tools necessary to have proper digestion, so inadequate stomach acid, enzymes, and then an imbalance in the gut microbiome. And so if that's the case, then you don't have the tools necessary to digest, especially a high fiber diet, which is what a plant-based diet is. So that could be an underlying condition. And then another underlying condition, of course, is hiatal hernia. So, I've heard a lot of different statistics. I've actually heard 1 in 2 Americans has a hiatal hernia, which those would be undiagnosed. They're very, very common, but the diagnosed hiatal hernias, I've heard as many as 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. So it's a lot of people, and it's a very common condition. And in fact, there was a really interesting study done, I know I bring this up all the time, about people in rural Africa and how when they look at their stomach, it sits well underneath the diaphragm like this. That's where it's supposed to be. But in Americans, we see the stomach adhered to and pressed against the diaphragm, or in the case of hiatal hernia, through the diaphragm. And so we really have to take a look at what these different populations of people are eating. So in these rural African communities, they're eating more of a plant-based diet, plants, but fruits, vegetables, a lot of sweet potatoes, tubers, things like that. No junk foods, no chemical processed foods, and then maybe meat, dairy, and eggs for special occasions, so just once in a while. So it's very different ways of eating. So yeah, hiatal hernias are very common, and unfortunately, a lot of doctors really don't know what to do about a hiatal hernia. They might refer you to surgery, or they might even tell you that there's really nothing that they can do for you and that it really shouldn't bother you. So I did not accept that when I had my hiatal hernia. I had a lot of questions about my hiatal hernia, and I sought out to learn as much as I could, because logically in my mind it made sense that, okay, I've got my stomach lodged in my diaphragm, I've got all of these symptoms that are created by the hiatal hernia, even though my doctor says my symptoms aren't a result of a hiatal hernia. They couldn't tell me what they are a result of, we don't know. So logically speaking, it all went together. My hiatal hernia was causing my symptoms, therefore I needed to unherniate. I needed to get that stomach out of the diaphragm so that healing could take place, and so that the pressures that the hernia creates would go away, and therefore the symptoms would go away. And so in this video, I'm just going to share the 3 it's the summary. Again, I'm going to go into depth later in the month, but I'm just going to do kind of the summary today. I will put a link to my website, pamfox.org, when I'm done streaming, if you want to go to my website and learn more about my hiatal hernia reversal protocol, which is a course that I do charge for. So number 1 is to identify and address what not only caused your hiatal hernia, but what you may be doing today and on a regular basis that supports and exacerbates your hiatal hernia. So I go through a long list of reasons, things that could cause your hiatal hernia, so that you can identify with that. And then I go through a long list of all of the different things that we may be doing on a daily basis, common things that can support that herniation and exacerbate that herniation. So in other words, things that we're doing that push your stomach up and hold it up there. Okay, we have to identify and address these things first, because if we want the stomach to move down, we have to stop doing things that push it up, right? And constipation is at the top of that list, because if you have to bear down every time you pass a bowel movement, that pushes your stomach up. It supports that pushing up. And so then over time, as you begin to form that herniation, your stomach just starts to create adhesions and attachments there, and it just makes its home stuck in your diaphragm. And then you have an obstruction in your diaphragm, which can cause problems with breathing. You have, a belt around your stomach essentially, which can cause, that pressure on your vagus nerve, which can cause heart palpitations and panicking and anxiety and, changes in your mood. Not to mention, your vagus nerve regulates stomach acid production, which we need good amounts of adequate stomach acid. So a long list of things can start to happen because of this simple anatomical positioning of your stomach now living in your hiatus or your diaphragm. The hiatus is the hole like that in your diaphragm that your esophagus comes through. This is what it's supposed to look like. Diaphragm, esophagus, hiatus, stomach. But instead we have this or we have this. Okay, so yeah, that's step one, is really just identifying those different forms of intragastric pressure and making those lifestyle changes so the stomach has the room to move down, to hang down, to move down, because it's not always being pushed up. So the second thing is really mastering the ability to not only move the stomach down, but to hold it down, okay? And this is done through some very specific and gentle daily exercises that gently rock that stomach, move it down. So your stomach, if it's lodged in your diaphragm is moving up and down with every breath, right? It moves with every breath. But if it's taking your stomach with it, then what we need to do is do exercises that create separation. We want to get that separation, because once you can master the ability to unherniate your stomach, then you can move on to step 3, which is to tighten that hiatus. Okay, so remember, your hiatus is the hole that becomes enlarged and dilated in your diaphragm, and we want it to be nice, tight, and small. So if we can, and it's a muscle. Your diaphragm sits here under your rib cage, and it's skeletal muscle, which means we do have control over strengthening that muscle, which means we can tighten that hole. So now, whenever you have any form of intragastric pressure pressing your stomach up, it's going to be less likely to herniate through that hole if we tighten that muscle and keep the tone and the function of our diaphragm healthy and strong throughout the rest of our life. And that can be done through a maintenance program of a few, of these, less than 1 minute of exercise every day. Maybe once, maybe twice a day. It's going to maintain the tone and the strength. Okay. I thought you guys lost me there for a second, but I'm back. Okay, so number 3 is, number 1 is to address and identify what's causing and supporting your hernia. Number 2 is mastering the ability to move your stomach down and unherniate the hernia. And before I move on, I just want to also add that, every hernia is different. The size is different. How old it is different. And so how much time it takes and whether or not you're even going to be able to do that, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be able to do it. I mean, you can try and you can find out, but I don't know. I mean, you could have a hernia that's been there your entire life and it's got a lot of adhesions and it's really holding on tight. It might take you 3 months, 6 months, or even a year in order to stretch those adhesions and get that stomach to get some movement. So what I teach is a very gentle exercise, but it must be done daily, okay? So number 3 then is tightening that hiatus. So that not only have we moved the stomach down, but now we're going to keep it down. And again, I teach some very specific exercises that, quite honestly speaking, I don't see anyone else teaching this. In fact, I see them teaching the opposite. The conventional diaphragmatic exercises actually move your stomach up and support your herniation. So you've got to learn to do it in a way that moves the stomach down, and then we can tighten that diaphragm. So we want the stomach to move down and we want the hiatus to tighten, okay? And so this isn't a one thing, one time, quick, easy fix. It's exercises. And it's holistic and it's comprehensive, and understanding again what caused my hernia, what am I doing to support this hernia, how do I learn how to master moving this down, and how do I keep it down by strengthening and conditioning my diaphragm. And am I willing to do the daily exercise? It's not hard. In fact, it's very enjoyable, and a lot of the breathing techniques that I teach are very good at supporting healing of the vagus nerve, proper stimulation of that nerve through deep breathing that's very calming and good for the nervous system, and that can take you into a place of upregulating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the time that our body goes into healing and repairing mode. So these exercises are beneficial on many, many levels. Thank you, Wendy. So that's it. I just wanted to briefly come on and talk about that, and remind those of you that are taking my free 28-day challenge that will be back in the kitchen tonight at 5 o'clock. I'm really looking forward to it. I had an early breakfast, and I'm going to have a light lunch so that I'll be hungry tonight for dinner. So, oh, and I have this ball here. I was going to use it as a prop to explain the lower esophageal sphincter. We'll do that in another video. All right, guys, thanks for watching.